Here's the hard truth. Most communication is useless. You tell your team what needs to be done, they nod, they take notes, and then deliver something completely different. You give feedback thinking you were clear, and somehow they walk away defensive. Or you're coaching someone who says, "Yeah, I get it," but you can tell they don't. We spend hours talking, explaining, convincing, and people still don't get it. Why? Because we treat words like they're reality. They're not. Words are promises, opinions, stories. Behavior is what actually happens. What people do is the truth. What they say is just a story. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about reading minds or guessing feelings. It's about paying attention to the feedback that's already there. If someone isn't responding, it's not about their story. It's about how your communication lands. You can't blame them for not understanding what you meant. And no, this isn't about blaming yourself either. It's about taking ownership. You have feedback right in front of you. You just need to use it. Observe, adjust, and test until your message actually connects. If you've been with me through the earlier videos, you already know behavior is data. Not words, not excuses, not intentions, just data. Every meeting where you assume alignment, every moment you ignore the signals, every time you fail to adjust, that's lost influence, lost growth, lost opportunity. But here's the good news. Once you start calibrating, behavior changes everything. You stop guessing, you stop arguing, you stop pushing harder, you communicate smarter, you lead better. And the results? They follow naturally. So let's stop treating words as truth and start reading reality to lead what's possible next. I used to think good communication meant saying the right thing at the right time. Until one day, a client proved me wrong. Sometimes the true insight doesn't come from what people say, it comes from what happens in the silence after. I was working with a client, let's call him Adam, brilliant entrepreneur, always composed, always in control. We were talking about why his team kept missing deadlines. And he said, "Yeah, I know. I need to delegate better." He said it quickly, like someone checking a box. But something in me paused. Because even though the words sounded right, his body said something different. His voice tightened, his jaw locked for half a second, and his breath just stopped. Now, the old me would have kept nodding, moved on. He said the right thing, after all. But this time, I caught it. Something about the stillness got my attention. So instead of pushing forward, I got curious. I asked, "When you think about delegating, what comes up for you?" And just like that, his shoulders dropped, he exhaled, and a real breath this time. Then he said quietly, "Honestly, it scares me. I don't trust people to do it right." That moment changed everything for me. Not because I gave a brilliant insight, but because I calibrated. I stopped listening to his words and started responding to his behavior. From there, the work shifted. We didn't talk about time management anymore. We talked about control, trust, and fear. And for the first time, he actually made changes that stuck. That's the power of calibrating on behavior. when you slow down and pay attention to what's really happening, you stop coaching the story and start transforming the truth. Behavior equals feedback, not judgment. What that moment with Adam taught me was something simple but powerful. Behavior is feedback, not judgment. Words express intent, what someone means to communicate. But behavior reflects impact. It shows how someone is actually responding in real time, whether they intend to or not. You can say something perfectly clear and logical, but if the other person flinches, freezes, or holds their arms over their body, it's giving you information, and that's the real data. In NLP, the communication model explains this beautifully. Every external event, a meeting, a conversation, even a glance from across the room, passes through internal filters, memories, beliefs, values, and decisions. Those filters shape our state, which then shows up through physiology, like breathing, posture, tone, and finally, behavior. If this idea feels new, you might want to watch my previous video about how everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have. It connects directly to what we're talking about today. I'll link it in the description so you can check it out after this. Behavior isn't random or good or bad. It's the visible output of someone's current internal world. And when you see it that way, it stops being personal. That's the key. Don't take reactions personally. Use them as data. Think of behavior like your car's dashboard. When a warning light turns on, you don't get offended. You get curious. You read it, learn from it, and adjust. People work the same way. Their behavior gives you clues, sometimes subtle and sometimes loud, about what's working and what isn't. When you start seeing behavior as feedback instead of judgment, everything changes. You stop guessing, stop reacting emotionally, and start responding strategically. You notice patterns, you adapt faster, and your communication becomes far more effective, whether you're leading a team, coaching a client, or navigating a tough conversation. Recent studies show that nonverbal cues often reveal more truth than words. In 2023, researchers found that small shifts in eye contact, tone, or gesture directly affect whether people feel understood. Stronger responsiveness leads to deeper trust. A 2024 study on collaborative teams found that when people were truly engaged, their body language synced. More nods, laughter, and open posture. When disengaged, those signals shut down long before anyone said a word. Behavior is the most accurate feedback you'll ever get. It's not about reading minds, it's about reading reality. So next time you communicate, don't just listen for agreement, watch for alignment. That's where the truth lives. The meaning of communication equals the response you get. Once you start watching for alignment, here's the next step. Realizing that communication isn't what you say, it's what the other person hears. The essence of this NLP presupposition, the meaning of your communication, is the response you get. You can have the best message, the right topics, even the purest intention, but if it doesn't land, it doesn't work. Because communication isn't about expression, it's about connection. Think about it. many times have you explained something clearly, only to watch the other person misunderstand, withdraw, or even get defensive? You walk away thinking, but I was clear, yet the outcome says otherwise. That's not failure, that's feedback. In NLP, this principle is the foundation of collaboration, the ability to adjust your communication based on how the other person responds. If your message isn't landing, it's not about blaming yourself or them. It's about asking, what is their response telling me? And then using that feedback to adapt. Start by simply observing. Notice their behavior, their facial expression, tone, posture, or even silence. Then adjust. Maybe slow down your pace, shift your tone, or reframe what you're saying in a way that meets them where they are. Then watch again. If their response changes, you're right on track. If not, adjust once more. It's a continuous loop. Observe, adjust, test, until real understanding happens. Research on emotional attunement shows that when people consciously match tone, rhythm, or body language, the brain's mirror neuron system activates, creating faster trust and empathy. In leadership studies, teams reported higher clarity and motivation when leaders adapted their message to audiences' cues in real time, rather than just delivering information and hoping it would stick. So if your message isn't landing, don't double down, get curious. Observe, adjust, and test until it does. Because real communication isn't about proving you're right. It's about creating understanding that moves people forward. When you start to see communication as a response loop, not a one-way delivery, you stop talking at people and start connecting with them. That's when true influence begins. So, how to calibrate behavior? Now that we've talked about what communication really means, not what you say, but the response you get, let's talk about how to use that in real time. Because knowing is one thing, calibrating is a completely other thing. Calibration is about developing sensitivity, the ability to notice the smallest shifts that tell you whether your message is landing or not. It's what separates a good communicator from a truly effective one. Let me give you another example. I was coaching a client years ago who said she was ready to take her business to the next level. Her words were confident, but her body told a different story. Her shoulders dropped and her voice softened when she added, "I think I can do it." I leaned back, softened my tone, and asked, "It sounds like part of you isn't fully convinced yet. What's that about?" Immediately, her posture lifted. She laughed a little and said, "You caught that." That's calibration in action. You observe, adjust, and test, but not mechanically. You do it with curiosity and care. Here's how you can start practicing it. First, train your eyes and ears. Notice what changes when people shift their breathing, eye movement, or even how they hold their body. Second, match before you lead. Match their energy first. If they're quiet and thoughtful, lower your tone. If they're animated, open your posture. Once you're in sync, then you can guide the conversation forward. And third, check for results. Did your adjustment make them more open, more relaxed, more engaged? If yes, keep going. If not, shift again. Calibration isn't about control. It's about connection. It's the art of staying present enough to respond to what's really happening, not what you hope is happening. When you learn to calibrate this way, conversations flow easier. Misunderstandings drop and influence becomes effortless, not because you're saying more, but because you're finally in tune. What if you kept ignoring the signals right in front of you? Picture this. You walk into a meeting, you've explained the plan, every word clear, every point sharp, everyone nods, pens scratch, smiles appear, and yet something feels off. You notice the hitch in someone's breath, the subtle stiffening of the shoulders, our eyes dart away for just a moment. Their words say one thing, but their bodies tell another story. Now imagine you actually see it. You slow down, tune in, and pay attention. You feel the rhythm of the room, the rise and fall of voices, the energy in the pauses, the shift in breathing when someone hesitates. You notice the crossed arms, the tapping foot, fleeting flicker of doubt, and instead of brushing it off, you lean in with curiosity. You adjust your tone here, soften your stance there, you match their energy, and watch closely. And then it happens. Eyes open, postures relax. Hesitation turns into engagement. Ideas flow. The trust deepens. People aren't just listening, they're responding, connecting, participating. Subtle signals become actionable insight. Resistance turns into alignment. What if you started reading behavior like a dashboard? Notice the small shifts, adjusting in real time, and testing what works. What if every pause, flinch, or hesitation became a guide, not a judgment? This isn't theory. It happens every single day. Remember Adam? His breakthrough didn't come from clever words or a perfect plan. It came from noticing the half-second pause, the tightened jaw, the almost imperceptible shifts in posture. That's where the truth lived, and that's where the transformation happened. That's the power waiting for you. The next time you communicate, ask yourself, will I react to words or will I respond to reality? Because when you choose to calibrate on behavior, you don't just change the conversation, you transform what's possible. When you pay attention to behavior, not just words, and adjust in real time, resistance turns into connection, hesitation turns into engagement, and confusion becomes clarity. True influence isn't about convincing others, it's about calibrating with them. When you do that, you stop reacting and start responding. Ready to see what's possible when you lead this way? Click on the next video and let's keep growing together.